to discuss public relations in gaming and esports. I've recruited somebody who's worked on both sides of the alley, so journalism and PR, to provide you all with a well-rounded view of the profession. Because if it was just me speaking about it, it would not be too favourable from my experience as a journalist. But so thank you for joining me today, Cody, mate.
Yeah, no problem.
Obviously, you're how many years in you now in PR?
Ooh, like a year and a half to 2 years ish, more or less. I mean,
That's crazy.
yeah, have dabbled in it kind of unofficially and then been doing kind of full-time agency work for a little over a year and a half now.
And you work for JSA and are involved in like the PR for Complexity,
Hmm.
Vindex, which is esports engine, Belong, former MLG folk, and there's one more I'm missing, EA as well, right? So
EA and
for the
Game
FIFA
Square.
stuff.
Yeah,
Oh, and Game
so
Square as well, of course.
yes. How could you
Forgot
forget?
about that. So, which obviously is Complexity and a bunch of other associated brands within that. So, you deal with the public relations for a bunch of pretty major brands in esports and gaming.
Yeah, so JSA, just quick background. We are a strategic communications consultancy. The firm is based in Santa Monica, LA on the West Coast, but we have a few folks like myself who are remote, small firm, 10, 11 folks roughly, and we work on digital media, consumer tech, and then we have sort of an esports and gaming division, if you will. So I operate kind of on that side of the company with folks you mentioned, EA, Vindex, Game Square, Complexity, and we manage kind of all their PR, sometimes with in-house PR partners, or for other folks like Complexity, we're kind of their dedicated in-house PR team in some ways.
Did you say like strategic communications consultancy or something? Then
It has a good ring to it,
no,
so I figure
it sounds so wanky, man. It sounds so like polished up for like, yeah, we'll handle your communications essentially.
essentially, I mean, that's what we're doing. Yeah.
But yeah, to be fair, it sounds more professional than that. That's why I don't work in PR because my angles are not as great. But like, so it may be really rudimentary, but I don't imagine that everybody who watches and listens to this knows exactly what PR is and the core functions of it. So I always think of it as damage control. So like when shit blows up at a company, PR are there to obviously make sure that they tread water carefully and approach things the right way and do as little damage as possible to the brand. But like, can you just give like I guess like a brief rundown on what you do? I guess maybe on like a monthly basis, like all of the core things that you do.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's changing every day. Like no 2 days are different, that we like to say. And to your point, like reputation management is a big part of what we do, and crisis communication. So if you ever find yourself in like a tricky scenario, like we're obviously like kind of looped in to try to figure out how do we navigate this in the best way that's going to kind of position the company well. So I think like one of the best ways that I've heard of, how to describe PR, and I'm stealing this from someone else who's actually the director of comms for PepsiCo a long time ago. His name was Ken Rouse, like total badass guy, but he essentially said like essentially what PR is we are communicating what's happening inside the company to the outside world, right? So we are, if you think about those two things, we're like the glass or the window between. Um,
Right.
and I'm going to kind of run with this metaphor a little bit, but the way the light might hit the glass or the window, it's kind of refracting in different ways, and is coming in different hues and sort of variants of that kind of color that comes in. So essentially, what I'm trying to relate that to is like that's kind of how PR works, right? We are positioning news in different ways to try to target like different audiences, and we try to kind of maximize the impact and awareness around like certain company initiatives and announcements, and also to like try to level it up to like a larger company narrative. So when you think of a company and like kind of what they're known for, if you think about like Epic Games for a chance and sort of their role in the metaverse, they might have an announcement and think like, well, how can we kind of relate that back to how we actually operate as a company? And I think people have a sort of a misconception that PR is like deceitful in that way, or kind of lying and shady about how, I'm sure you have opinions about this. I'm sure some of them are true. But I think a good, PR partner and publicist will try to like be honest about how, certain company announcements and initiatives are really laddering up to that larger company narrative.
Right. Yeah. I think this the source of I guess my dissatisfaction with like the PR angle occasionally and sometimes is you say like you're taking things internally, taking it externally, and like you used a very fancy metaphor that I'm not going to be able to continue with this, but journalists do the same thing, right? and they swear to be unbiased, but like PR firms are obviously biased towards those that are paying them. And also, it's only ever the good things that will get promoted by you guys, right? So naturally, I feel like it is deceitful because you are trying to find, in a sense, you're trying to find the best possible angle at all times, which is the best thing to do if you're getting paid by them. That's why you're being paid. So it makes complete sense. Whereas, look, like if you work PR at Activision Blizzard, like God bless you, like that's a challenge, I'm sure. But like,
Yeah.
I don't think the PR people there are like gonna actually do what is right. And what's right, in my opinion, is like voicing what's actually happening. It relies on the journalists and I guess whistleblowers and staff that are looking to unionize and stuff, right? Are
Mhm.
actually going to put stuff out there. So I struggle with it that way. I know I've spoken out before about how PR people are basically hired to lie, and that's not the entire perspective, of course. Like it is dramatic, but of course, like you guys do provide an inside look, but it is not as well rounded, may I say, as it is in journalism. You know.
Yeah, for sure. I think like to add on to that, I mean like the role between internal and external is like it's a big gap, right? Because it's like everything that's happening at the core, sort of inside the company, the deep inner workings, and sometimes that might have shed light on very unfavorable situations within a company. But like really, like our job as publicists is to work with the public and kind of be able to disseminate that information, good and bad. And you have to be like honest to some degree, right? Like, you might come out and like just I'm losing my train of thought here, like try to squander like everything that's being said, but like you have to like be able to own a level of it, certainly, to be able to like move on and communicate that in a way that's like fair to the public, right? Like you can't just like come out and spew lies. Like you're communicating with a global audience at many
Mm-hmm.
times. So
Like the cynical part of me thinks companies that are managed by PR firms only like own up to mistakes because if if they don't, they will get called out on their bullshit. So therefore, they have to accept some responsibility. But if there was a way in which you could accept no responsibility as a company and still try and maintain that you are the perfect company that has values and honors people and looks after them efficiently and doesn't do things wrong, then they would go that route if possible. But instead, they have to kind of go like, yeah, I'll hold my hands up. Like, did do some stuff wrong, but like, honestly, we'll use this moment as a period for growth. And like, from here on out, we're going to make sure we instill certain values. Like, obviously, very cynical views from myself. But so
it may be
you,
the case though,
yeah,
like it
in
may
some
actually be the
cases.
case. Like, of course, that's kind of what you expect to hear, but that might be what's happening in any company. So
Yeah.
I implore you, Adam Fitch, to have a slightly more positive view.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think everyone who works in PR, every publicist, is evil by any means. I think some would actually be annoyed by some of the things they have to do sometimes in their jobs to do a good job at what they're doing.
Not fun.
No, and I've
Not fun to be in a bad situation. Yeah.
spoken to people at the height of like scandals and really bad shit in esports. I've spoken to people who were dealing with that on like the publicist side,
Hmm.
and it's like 3 hour crisis calls, like trying to work out what to do. And it's like, yeah, I don't envy them. And obviously they're there to just do their job, But like, obviously you have a background in journalism as well.
Hmm.
So coming from that, did has your perception changed, or did you have a different perception of PR before you went into it, or were you always this well-rounded and optimistic and kind of glass half full about it?
Oh, definitely not as well-rounded. I mean, in terms of my perception, I think I was very neutral. I don't think I really understood PR until I was like, inside an agency, like working with executives in different companies and doing their announcements and things and messaging and positioning and like everything that goes into it. I think I was just blissfully unaware of literally the amount of work that goes into like any sort of announcement that goes out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think really there's just a lot more that meets the eye. And I think one of the most like eye-opening scenarios when I first started with JSA, who, this is my first agency that I've ever worked with, but they have like a very good reputation, high caliber that they work to, right? So when you and I receive pitches, and I, in the past, I might not even read the pitch. I might just scroll
Mm-hmm.
down to see the headline and the release, right? and to see, like, to work with my colleagues now who are obviously so talented, and see them putting in like hours of time into crafting like the perfect pitch about how do we summarize this information and how do I present it to you in a way that's going to be appealing to you as a kind of an esports and gaming reporter. How can I, describe this news in a way that resonates with like a tech audience, right? Or consumer audience, right? So just the amount of time that and strategy that is behind like a lot of the things, the way that we do things, I think is very like interesting and eye-opening. And I honestly, I mean, now I have a lot more respect for the good publicists now, right? So like, I obviously still do a little bit of freelancing on the side. So when I get a pitch or something from one of the good PR people, like, I give them the time of the day to say, this doesn't really fit our audience because X, Y, Z, right? Or I, say no thanks, but of course the people that do like the spray and pray approaches where you're just like part of like a, 100 mail email list that come to you, you're like, I don't really like care about this guy, right? Because it's not a very personalized approach in any way. So I think those are kind of my opinions.
Oh, and when you accidentally see the list that you are a part of, where they've blasted out to 100 people at once, but they forgot to like BCC and instead just CC'd you all, that really makes you feel just like a cog in the machine. Like that,
Unforgivable.
I can't imagine the feeling of like you press send and then you're like, wait, did I BCC that? And then you've just exposed the emails of like 100 journalists all to
Email
each other.
anxiety is real. Yeah.
Oh
Email
god, that
anxiety is
yeah.
so real.
I don't know if I could do the job just because of like dealing with that
Yeah.
alone would worry me. Like, thankfully, I'm on the receiving end of it. Though it has quietened down since leaving publications and going to Hitmarker, less people want me now, which hurts, like deep down.
I want you. I still love you, Adam.
I
You know that.
appreciate that, man. But like, so with esports being such a young industry, and may I say, quite immature industry at times, it's led by people who are like inexperienced business folk occasionally, if not a lot of the time. They were like pro players turned influencers and then founders. Like, do you think there are any elements that in PR and as a publicist that are unique to esports that you kind of have to deal with that you wouldn't if you went into a more established industry?
Oh, it's so unique, Adam. I mean, like the people that are covering this space, I mean that, the people that are covering this space, like yourself and many others, like they're very deeply ingrained in this space and in the works. And then you get a little bit more specific and you talk about like a reporter that might cover games like Apex Legends or Counter-Strike, right? Like just how much they know about that game, that community, that audience, what's happening, the updates, like, it's very, very nuanced when you dig like super deep into it. And your job as a publicist is to be, like intimately aware of everything that is happening in those sort of worlds, right? For each, kind of interaction that you have, right? So I think, esports moves like very fast and, just the way that the industry kind of operates on Twitter, like a bad word goes out quickly and things like that. And so, say, I'm going to speak in hypotheticals for pretty much all of this, but like,
Okay.
There's an update to Counter-Strike and there's kind of a glaring bug that's happening, right? And there's a lot of like, just people are up in arms about it and talking about it. And like, well, what is the effect is this going to have on this tournament? You need to know about that, right? And you need to be prepared anytime like you're putting a spokesperson on with one of those reporters and kind of know how you're going to navigate that question that's inevitably going to come up. So you got to be on Reddit. You have to be on Twitter and looking up like what is the discourse right now? What's the temperature for this audience? And do a lot of the back end work on the front side to be able to ensure that everything can go well when you're kind of in communications with those reporters, right?
So it's not a very 9 to 5 job.
Not at all. Not at all.
Well, how many hours do you allot to sleep each night in that case? Like, do you have alarms that go off periodically in the night just to check Twitter and LinkedIn?
No, not necessarily. I mean, we can catch up from the work from good folks like yourself and other reporters, and things that are out there, and like I said, like problems that are in game communities and in the industry, like they're building. People are talking about them a lot, and so it's going to come across your Twitter feed and stuff like that. So you need to be like really ingrained in this audience and in this world, right, to keep up with that. Because if you're not, like, you're going to miss something and you're going to get into a really bad situation.
And as you say, like the industry is very plugged in, especially like Western esports is very plugged in on Twitter. That is like the town square of esports, effectively, at least in the West, right? So, have you seen or like been a part of any instances where a client has gone straight to their audience instead of getting involved and reaching out to you guys?
Yes, yeah, like someone from our clients that's kind of
Mm.
reaching out on Twitter and stuff like that. Yeah, that happens.
So like
I mean,
they skip you guys who they hire employ to like make sure they're handling things the right way, and they just like go tweet about it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it happens. It happens like for a lot of people, I'm sure. But I mean, I think there's kind of like an educational disconnect between like when that happens in that scenario and why we wouldn't recommend someone commenting or kind of communicating, speaking on a hot button issue, for example, before kind of consulting us. But I mean, like, obviously, they're kind of free to do that, right? So, and I think there's benefits on the other side. Like when you think about like kind of vocal people in our industry, like that are constantly talking on Twitter and talking about the stuff that they're working on. Like, I mean, there is, I don't know, there's value in kind of establishing yourself as like a thought leader in that sense, you know?
Hmm. Uh, on like a fun aside, so you can take your professional hat off just for this one question,
Okay.
and you're not expecting this whatsoever. Is there anybody in esports that you think really should have PR, a publicist? A couple of
Um,
names come to my mind, but I'm wondering if we're on the same wave.
I mean, who are you thinking? Because why don't you, I'm going to kick it back to you.
Well, that's not how this works. I will say myself. It would be, especially like
Yeah.
me 3 years ago. I could have really done with a PR manager. Like
Yeah.
100%, I could have done with someone tapping me, going, "Adam, just don't go about it that way. You don't have to reply to him and literally just like diss his mother. You could actually go about this maturely."
Right.
Obviously, I never actually went that far. It would always be very personal to that person, but
Right.
but no. But anyway, so how do you go about building strong relationships with reporters? Because that's obviously a huge part of the job. If you don't have those connections, or you have very a fractured relationship, may I say, with journalists, it could be hard to get through to them. And of course, like disseminating good news and getting stories on publications for people to read is obviously a huge part of the job.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like two things. I think PR shouldn't be a transactional experience, right? It shouldn't be I have news, you write the news, right? I don't think it should be like that. I think the way like I operate and our firm looks at it is like a partnership, right? Because like, we have stories to tell, we have announcements, and then, reporters need news and content, want interesting things to talk about, right? And a big part of our job too is like making the story interesting, right? And like it might just be kind of at face value a simple partnership, but it's like how can we really kind of position this in an interesting way that's again not like deceitful, not incorrect, but like how can we kind of actually take out the interesting elements of what this partnership means between these two companies and pass it along to you guys, yourself, Adam, as a reporter,
Hmm.
to be able to then communicate that to the public. But I think the other big thing is to just be like authentic, you know what I mean? Like I feel like I have like authentic relationships with a lot of reporters, and yourself is one of them. And like, um, like we keep in touch just as friends, you know what I mean? And I do the same thing with a lot of other reporters. I send them a message on Discord to say, "Hey, how's your week going?" Like for no, it's not like to push any agenda. It's because like we're genuinely friends. I hope you feel the same way.
I
But
feel like you used me, mate. Yeah.
it's not true. And it is. But like we talk, like we check in, there's reporters that I like go and play like Halo with, and we have fun, and like it's just like I know that's probably not normal for a lot of people or a lot of publicists or in a lot of industries, but I mean like you really got to be authentic and like, just be a good person and be friendly, and I think that goes a long way. You know what I mean?
I'd say the good PR folks I've worked with like take time to understand what I'm looking for. I would say what's good for me on a selfish level, at least, right?
Hmm.
So like not to send me casual stuff like, oh, there's a new character coming in Apex Legends or something, like
Right.
to send me stuff that's like business and industry related, and that cuts through a lot of what I consider to be crap because that's not my beat. It's like if someone was sending me stuff just about like FIFA Ultimate Team, it just
Right.
it would not move the needle. It would just be an inbox filler, and it would get deleted so
Right.
fast. Whereas there are certain PR folk in the industry who will send me absolutely everything, and it'll be
Hmm.
like stuff that I like. They know that I know it's shit as well. Like they've gone on like esportsearnings.com and just like, oh, the top 10 earners, and like I work in the industry, like I work and I'm so ingrained in the industry. Do you really think that's all they earn, or do you think they have other sources of income? Why are you wasting your time? And that actually sours a relationship because they don't understand like who I am and how I go about things. You
Yeah.
know, so on a selfish point of view, like those who reach out and just say, "Hi, can we have a 30-minute call? Like, I'd love to know what you're interested in and how we can help you get these stories over the line." And
Yeah.
also just establish that kind of relationship between that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like at the end of the day, like we're both like humans, like you know what I mean. So we need to like communicate to each other as humans. Again, it shouldn't be like a transactional thing. And I think like to your point, Adam, like respect is a huge part of like this industry and what we do. Like I have respect for you as a reporter, so I'm not just gonna like funnel crap to you or things that you know you're not gonna care about. You know what I mean? Like we have to be
Mm-hmm.
very like measured about our interactions with you. Like I don't want to be spamming you. Like even if I have like you know it's busy with clients, we have a lot of news to distribute. Like I'm gonna caveat my emails with you know sorry about like, the stream of news that's coming to you. You know what I mean? Or you know I'm gonna acknowledge that you know I'm you know using a lot of your time with kind of my news and things like that. So I think like respect plays a big part of it at the end of the day as well.
And you mentioned like transactional. I can say when I went from publications like ESI and Deserto and moved over to Hitmarker, where I'm still writing news, but obviously I'm not a journalist in the same way. Like the amount of people in PR who no longer send me anything, though they have my email address, is insane because obviously I was at like a huge publication
Hmm.
and they were trying to get stuff on there, but now it doesn't provide the optics they need, I suppose. I don't know what it is, but like the amount of people that dropped off at that point was insane. And then you realize at that point that you can kind of notice those who genuinely care and like have
Hmm.
a relationship with you versus like don't care and are using you to get onto the site you work for. Which I mean, on a pragmatic view, like that makes sense. You are basically like trying to get through me onto the website. I understand that, but like some people, you know, like care a bit more than that, and it is actually about the story and about about the information that gets out there, you know. So
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
really does make a difference, like those who take a minute to just establish themselves and the relationship there, you know. It truly
Completely
does,
agree.
but it's quite rare occasionally. So, like, what qualities would you say are needed to be successful in this role in this industry?
Yeah, I mean, in esports and gaming specifically, I think it was a lot about what I was mentioning earlier about just being like super in tune with the space and what people are talking about. And like, it takes a while to fill up a Twitter list with the correct followers of people you want to hear, like their opinions and, you know, get that right sort of tailored, you know, news feed to
Yeah,
be able to keep track of everything. So just like be super in tune with it, like research, well oiled. I think like, again, to your point, like, spending a lot of time like researching like who is really the right person for this announcement or this piece of news. Like do the extra work. Like spray and pray methods just do not work. Like the hundreds of mailing lists and things like that, like it doesn't work. Like you got to take time, you got to be authentic, and you got to build those like really good relationships. um, you know, you have to be an excellent writer for sure. You got to have a creative mind. Like people
right.
might not know that like PR is actually like very creative in the sense of like you know messaging and positioning and
How
you
can I
know
spin this to make it sound better than what it is?
sure, yep. You know, at its purest form, sure, you know what I mean. But it's a very you be like super creative, and I think with any industry, like you need to be like super obsessed with what you're doing, and you need to be really into it. And you gotta take the extra time after work or on the weekends, like listen to a podcast about the space, like whoever's like listening to this YouTube video, for example, like take that extra time to like put in and learn,
Hmm.
you know, and see kind of if it's PR specifically, like see how other companies are operating, what kind of stories they're placing, how they're positioning their companies, like what's their messaging look like, and kind of what inspiration can we pull from that to use kind of for ourselves. You know what I mean?
Got you. So you say like networking is a huge part of it, and also making sure that you are like not just a visitor to the space you're in, but like truly ingrained in it in some way, right? And
Yeah, basically.
so, what approach would you take? Say, I take you now, I'm your boss hypothetically, and I chuck you into, say, the sports industry or like the food industry. How do you how do you go about doing that? Is it just mad googling and mad Twitter? Like, how would you adapt?
Well, I mean, we work with, I think the interesting thing about gaming and esports is that it intersects with so many different industries,
Right.
right? So, what I
Yeah.
mean, if we're working with FIFA, like that obviously has, it's relative to the traditional sports industry, right? And entertainment is a big part of it. Now there's like this whole Web3, sort of industry that's coming along, and there's publications like Decrypt and things like that, and
Yeah.
gaming companies are getting involved. Like Complexity just had an NFT drop that came out a couple weeks ago. And so like we work with a lot of those industries. So it's the same thing. It's, getting familiar with the reporters, like
Right.
really understanding the landscape, like, and just kind of digging in really.
And there's no mistake there in which it takes time. Like there's no shortcuts on those things. Like it is just a case of like diving in head first and putting in the reps necessarily on that front. You can't cheat that stuff.
No,
And
totally
also,
agree.
can you still call it FIFA?
I think so. Yeah. Until,
Because is it not like
until
EA Sports Football Super Club Football Super Football 92 or something now?
that's a
Like,
name. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like
That's a name.
some
Yeah.
mad elaborate thing now, right?
Yeah.
Which
I
I don't
think,
want you
I think
getting
you
in
still
trouble, mate.
can.
As your PR manager, I don't want you getting in trouble with the client.
My question is how, like, will it take time to shed the FIFA name?
Oh
Because,
God! Well,
like,
people are still going to be calling it FIFA
you know,
for years, which is actually good for them because they still have that association.
it's
You know,
such a catchy name at the end of it. You know what I mean? Like FIFA, soccer. It's the
imagine if
game.
like Call of Duty couldn't be called Call of Duty anymore and it had to go like Shooty Shooty Bang Bang or something like. You'd still call it COD, wouldn't you? Like,
Yeah,
so they haven't, even though they can't use that name anymore. I don't know how much of a immediate L it is. In fact, it's probably like really good numbers and publicity around the game and the franchise moving forward
yeah,
if
yeah.
you
I
spin
mean,
it the right
there's
way.
for sure. I mean, there's benefits to that, which I won't speak on, but I mean, there's plenty of commentary about that whole kind of that deal coming through that people have talked about.
Which you cannot. Okay. So a lot of companies in esports, I'd say most seem to use external PR agencies, pay them a bit of dosh,
Mhm.
and let them handle it. I'm not aware of too many in-house PR stuff. Obviously, like FaZe have got Chelsea Northern and stuff. Presumably she's still there. I haven't spoken to her in a while. But like
Mhm.
FaZe have in-house, I think like Nip, they could do a better PR in my opinion than just in pajamas. But like they've got something. So like, what would you say are like the pros and cons of like both approaches? Obviously, you work for an agency, so you're going to be singing about how great that is. But like on a genuine basis, are there benefits to having in-house PR rather than working with an external agency?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll be honest. So if we're talking about like for the company and instead of like the
Mm,
individual, I think having both is ideal because you
okay.
have an in-house person that is wading through kind of all the internal stuff and sometimes the politics that like the agency doesn't really want to be spending its time on. It doesn't make sense for agencies to be kind of wading through like internal feuds and things like that
Hmm.
happen. So, and you also have someone to be in all the meetings again internally and say, what's actually the interesting pieces from this that we can pull and publicize, and then let me take this to our agency to be kind of
Right.
a strategic voice. So I think having both is great because then I guess the benefit of having a firm is that they can challenge ideas as well, right? So it's just having more cooks in the kitchen and different perspectives. So what I think is if I'm an in-house PR person, I say, oh, this is a great idea. Like we could do this with this, and I bring it to an agency partner. They can come back and say, well, actually, I don't think that's a great idea, or we shouldn't really talk about this. It doesn't really serve us. It's not worth our time. Like it's not really going to give us a lot of bang for our buck, or let's instead look at it in this kind of frame of thinking. So I think it's just like more collaborative. It's more of a mind share, and you can kind of bring all that kind of you know the knowledge that everyone has into one room and deliver like a better product, right?
Yeah. Do you think having someone in house actually produces more opportunities for more stories because they're like within the minutia? Whereas I suppose what's brought to you externally, if it's not by someone who knows what to look out for, they could actually just skip over some things and think, that's not actually a win we need to be celebrating publicly.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, like if you think about it, like we're not part of the company, we're not in like the Slack channels and the company Slacks and
Luckily
stuff
for
like
you.
that. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a lot, right? There's a lot in the minutia and in the weeds, and so
Hmm.
things might kind of slip by when you don't have that like boots on the ground person that's really kind of playing air traffic control, so to speak, and being able to take out like the good pieces and bring them to us and say, okay, how can we take this and kind of bring it out to the public?
Hmm. Right, let's talk about the career side of this. So
Let's do it.
I always joke, and obviously I'm not the first to make this, like PR is the dark side. So what happens is when journalists have had enough doing journalism, they move over to PR, they like go to the other side of the realm, right? Uh, that can't be the only natural career, the only way to get into PR. So, like, what would you advise people, like, what route to go down? Obviously, check Hitmarker jobs. That's one way of doing it.
I say that all the time, like to anyone that's just trying to broadly get into the industry. Like generally, I say go check out Hitmarker. So that's my shout out for you
Thank you. I'll,
guys
I'll send
because
the $5 via PayPal after this.
thank you. Um, yeah, I mean, like to your point, like journalists and writers are a huge part of like the people that end up being publicists. Like myself, I'm sure many others, like I think folks at Swipe Right who used to be at ESI and probably
Correct. Yeah.
some mobsters and things like that. And if we're talking about the gaming industry. So, um, in terms of like other, former career paths, I think it really just based on like your creativity, your knowledge of the industries that you're going to be working in, like what you're consuming, like, and also like just, writing is a huge part, right? Like you got to be able to write clearly, and whether that's like press releases or messaging or just like have like a really kind of creative mind. Like I know that sounds like cliche in a sense, but like you can think of things like a bit more broadly. It helps because like when you're kind of working together in a vacuum, you're like kind of huffing your own fumes a little bit, and you might not be considering, another perspective or angle that's not really like coming to you at the time. So it helps
Got
to
you.
have like a third party or new fresh face. So um, I wish I had like a recent example, but myself, obviously, I'm a journalist. We just hired this really great guy named Nick, and he was a former writer. He was working in the healthcare space, but he also dabbled in music. So when we have like, announcements that are in that vein, like he can bring a really good perspective. So it's just like, we're about where you come from, right? We have people on our team that have experience in entertainment and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
so they can add like a valuable perspective on things that we're doing in that
Interesting.
sector. Yeah.
Okay, so like like even though you feel like you may have niche knowledge from your previous like profession that you're working in, that could well cross over into what you're doing in PR in ways that separate you from other people. I've never really thought
Yeah.
of it like that, but that is a good point. And what's the career progression like in PR? Because on the journalism front, you kind of go from like junior journalist to like editor in chief,
Super junior.
and
Yeah.
that's yeah. It was just like 50 degrees of separation in the journalist thing from
Yeah.
junior to senior, and then you can move up into editorial, maybe do like a director of content type thing. But there's not the best pipeline for progression. I would suggest there. It's not as bad as it is for like broadcast talent, but it's still not great. How does that compare to PR?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people start in internships, and just for the record, like JSA, we're always looking for like super talented people to bring in either as contractors if we can at that moment or interns. So a lot of people come to us as interns, and then that turns into full time
Paid
jobs.
interns, right?
Paid interns. Yep.
Okay.
Hmm.
Good, or else I wouldn't have
Yeah,
been able to put this video out. You'd
I
have been
know.
cancelled.
I
Cancelled, I
know.
tell you.
I know. It's so good. We made it so far. No, but so we pay our interns. I assume a lot of other PR agencies do, but that's, you can study in college, you can do an internship, and like, right, like me, like I kind of started to figure out PR and teach myself at UGC, but really my contracting role with JSA was my first sort of role in this space, like as a full time, kind of high caliber position.
Hmm.
And then I was hired as account manager. So then you can start to lead clients and kind of be the face of the agency for that client and represent that company. And then you can be manager. So you have like other staff under you, such as coordinators and sort of junior staff that you can direct to help with the work. A lot of it can be like brunt work sometimes, which isn't great, but that's when you get to that level, you can sort of usher people to do that. And then I think other agencies, we're a small firm, so everyone has a hand in everyone's work. But I think other agencies have kind of like higher level account managers that
Right.
very much just like oversee everything that's happening and kind of speak to the CEOs and the executives and their point of contacts to be able to ensure like everything is being steered in the right direction in terms of reaching their communications goals and like their business objectives. Because at the end of the day, like those things have to be tied. Like you need biz OBJs to be able to, position and tailor your comms plan for the
You
company.
are so corporate now, biz OBJs.
I hate it.
Oh, Cody, man, Cody. But do you feel like you've missed a crucial part of the journey by not like going the formal education route with PR, or do you feel like you've been able to get to a level you need to be at regardless?
No, I don't think so. I mean, like, if you like, I'm in a position where I have like great mentors at this firm that really know the space well. I mean, our founder Jen is like smart as a whip. She was like VP of Corp Com at Yahoo and all these other companies, and we've worked with like Cameo and all these other big companies. So having that as like a mentor is more valuable, I think, than any sort of educational experience. But I think it helps, of course, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
people study PR and get a baseline, but it's when you're doing it in reality and practice, it's just like lights are on, this is the real deal. You know what I mean? So you have to be a lot sort of stronger and more strategic and be able to execute at that level. I was going to say something else. Can I remember it? No, can't.
Okay, well, that thing that reminds me of like riding a bike, mate. Because like you can study the theory of riding a bike all day long. Okay, you on the handlebars and you pedal, you go like that, and you just have to balance. But like, it's so different when you actually get on it when you're a kid. Obviously, you need like the stabilizers and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like,
Yeah,
yeah, no amount of learning can prepare you for jumping into the workforce or basically any job realistically.
exactly. Yeah.
Um,
I
and
did remember, if I could
okay,
jump
yeah, of
in.
course, man.
So when we had a presentation that was done, and the presenter asked, he said, "Raise your hand if you studied PR or plan to be in PR." And I think 1 out of 10 people in the room had raised their hand.
Right.
Right. So it just goes to show you. I'm not sure how that equates to, like, the broader sort of industry, but like I think it goes to show you that like you don't need the degree really. I mean, it certainly helps, and internships are great to be able to have that knowledge of how it works. But like
Yeah.
you don't need that. Like you really just need to be a great writer, creative thinker, or like things like that. I think at the end of the day are the most important.
Okay, and I've got one last thing. You can tell me how wrong or right I am on this. It
All
seems
right.
like the goal for many publicists, like lawyers, is to eventually have your own firm. So you work for others until you get to the point where it's like, look, I'm the captain now. I'm steering the ship. Does that seem to add up?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, in my experience, like knowing people that have gone on to start their own things, it seems like a natural progression. And I think everyone kind of wants to be the top dog in some ways, right? And pick and choose who you're working on. I think, like, obviously owning your own business, you get a little bit more flexibility
Mm-hmm.
in some senses. So if you're asking me that question, like, probably eventually, but I'm very realistic in terms of like where I'm at and wanting to learn more. And,
Mm-hmm.
it takes a lot of years of experience to operate at a communication executive level. You know what I mean? Because when you're working, especially in like big public companies and things that like we do, you got to know your shit. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? There's no margin for error. So, and it takes time to get to that point.
Yeah, and you cannot cheat that. But thank you very much for taking the time, mate. Opportunity now to plug whatever you need to plug.
Oh yeah, for sure. So follow JSA Partners on Twitter, and like I said, we are always looking for good creative people and talent. So if you're interested in getting involved in this space, like definitely drop me a line. I'm sure like my socials will be in the description or of some sorts.
Fine.
So yeah, definitely drop me a line. I'm happy to chat with anyone, and yeah, thank you, Adam, for having me on. Love
Of
what you guys
course,
are
man.
doing.
Of course, of course. Thank you very much for everyone watching / listening at home, because we are on the major audio platforms now: Spotify,
Mhm.
Google, Apple. Thank you very
Fancy.
much. Rate, like, subscribe, whatever other call to action these hosts normally say. Then I implore you to do that. And I'll catch you on the next episode next week. Cheers.